Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Monday night panel. We have a special edition tonight. We have a panel that is dedicated to women in football. So I won't tell you who's on at the moment. I'll let Vic introduce you to them. But it's going to be a very interesting evening. So just a couple of things. If you haven't seen tickets for Warsaw last game of the season and Harrogate both go on sale tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock online. So it's for season ticket, loyalty points over a certain amount. And then on Thursday, it goes to season ticket holders. So please look on Twitter or Facebook for the Swindon Town official ticket information. Okay, so we've got a lot to do tonight. So let's get Vic on straight away. Hi, Vic.
Hi,
Chris. I've unmuted you. Sorry. Are you okay?
Many people have tried to do that over the years, Chris.
It worked. Hey.
You're multitasking tonight, we should say, because obviously, as we know, there is a very important, I've never said this much in my life, but a very important scrutiny committee going on at Swindon Council tonight, as we know, for the purchase of the county ground. So as soon as we find out anything, we will let you know, won't you, Chris? You'll jump in and tell us.
Yeah. I've got it on the other laptop. I can tell you at the moment, it's just baffling me with whatever they're talking about. It's 2.3.8.6 is this and whatever. So I will keep an eye on that. And if there is anything, I will let Vic know as soon as possible. But I'm sure we'll have some some comments as well, because I'm sure other people are listening as well. So
fantastic.
Right. So shall we get this very special edition on the go? So I will bring everybody on individually. So first of all, we have got Ali, who is the lead physio at Swindon Town. We have got Lucy Ford, who's co-creator of Her Game Too. We have got Terry Clark, who is a Swindon Town supporter for many, many years. And one of our regular panelists, Anna. And Alice, who is plays for the first team for Swindon Town Women. So there we go. So any questions, please leave them in the comments. As I say every week, we'll get through as many as we can. Please don't be disappointed if your question isn't asked, but we will share them at the end anyway. So, okay. So, Vic, I am going to leave you and I will speak to you later.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. And I've already got a question in from Rob about the purchase of the stadium. Any news? Well, not at the moment. We'll let you know as soon as we get it. So thank you very much indeed for that, Rob. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. It's something that we've wanted to do for a long time. So I'm really pleased that we've managed to get this on the ground. The irony of a male being involved in this, I do get. So let's kick that straight off. Let's go around the panel then and find out your involvement in football. Ali, let's start off with you. And your involvement in the game of football. You're a physio. You've been a physio for a considerable amount of time. How did you get involved in the game?
Well, funny enough, I'm originally from Sydney. I hadn't played football. My other half was very much an Arsenal supporter. So when I was at university, I was given the opportunity to go to Newcastle United and was sort of exposed to the football environment there. And I think as soon as I finished my degree, straight away, I wanted to go into football. It seemed to be an environment that seemed challenging, but also very different to what my background had been in the NHS. So went straight from university straight into football, and Swindon's kind of been my home from the get-go. So I've done a couple of seasons in the academy and now have been granted the opportunity with the first team, which is brilliant.
It is brilliant. And we should say that your other half happens to be Kian Panayutu, who happens to be the assistant manager at Swindon Town Women's Football Club. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Football is very much our household, from obviously the men's game and the women's game.
Brilliant. We'll get into how your job is with all the ins and outs of this, because as we know, we're in 2022, although some don't quite get that. But we'll get that get to that in the course of this evening. Lucy, welcome to you. I know you're a Bristol Rovers ambassador, but never mind, we've let you on. Is that okay with you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Now, you're part of Her Game Too. tell us about Her Game Too, the organisation.
Yeah, so Her Game Too was founded in May of last year. So one of my very good friends and fellow Bristol Rovers fans, Kaz, she received a lot of online abuse just for commenting about a scoreline of another football team. And, you know, the tweet just went crazy viral. And then all this abuse started coming in for no reason, just for her commenting about a scoreline, really personal abuse, sexist abuse. And she said if we weren't in a lockdown at that point, she would have not wanted to attend games, which is really horrible. Someone who's a season ticket holder like myself. And then in about April time, she came to me and asked, you know, do I feel like there was a campaign out there, you know, tackling sexism in football? And she said no. And I said no. So she then said, why don't we do a video highlighting our experiences? So I was like, absolutely. So then there was initially there was 12 girls involved, all of who had comments online or in person for being football fans, like sexist comments, I should say. And so, yeah, we decided to launch a video just kind of highlighting our experiences, really. And it's just kind of exploded from there. It's been a crazy kind of 10 months, but so much has been achieved in such a short space of time, but we feel like it's only just the beginning.
Yeah, I know on the front of your website, you've got Alex Scott, haven't you, making comments about your organisation, and she...
It's more like a quote, like quotes of what she said. Not she's not quoted about us. Just more of like quotes because she's such a huge figurehead in football.
Yeah, fair enough. And well, goodness me, she's had her fair share of online abuse too, I think it's fair to say. Terry, welcome to you. Now, I don't want to say you go way back with women's football, but you do go back a little bit. And of course, you were with the official supporters club committee as well. So what was your involvement with the game?
Well, when I was working at Nationwide, I was lucky enough to be there at the time when the internet was just starting out. And there was a dedicated department for it. And I knew that we also had the sponsorship for the leagues and the England teams. And I applied for a job in there, not having any idea what the internet looked like or what it was. Talked myself into the job. And when I started it, the plan was that I was to learn how to code and actually start to build websites with the other guys in the department. But I sat there looking at it and I realized there was half a page on the whole of the football website on women's football. That was all. And it just made me quite mad, actually, to think that there were pages and pages dedicated to every league team, to the England teams. And then the women's team, England women's team, had half a page and there was nothing about domestic football or anything. So I just highlighted it, really. I said to my boss, this needs to be addressed. There's not enough on here about women's football. And quite honestly, he was very typical of, well, it's women's football. So, you know, is anybody going to be listening or reading it? So I said, yeah, I think they should. So he said, well, I'll leave it to you then. So I was really lucky. I got carte blanche to just go out and find as much information as I could. And I started with bios of the team, the England team. And then I was lucky that we employed a journalist that went to the games, and he would report on the matches. And so I met up with him, and then he introduced me to the England women's team. And in those days, they were very accessible. So much so when they had one of the first tournaments that they were playing in 2001 in Portugal. We went to meet them at Bisham Abbey, and then we went on the coach with them to the plane, and then we flew out there with them. And we were the only English journalists there working on the game. There was nobody else there. There were no supporters. It was just, we couldn't believe it. There was nobody, not even any expats out there. So it was really a case of just banging the drum. I got to know when the tournament actually started in 2001 in Germany. We went out for that, and then other people like PA and Match magazine, they were sent out there to cover the matches. So gradually, we all got to know one another, and we got to know the backroom staff at the FA that worked with Hope Powell, who was then the manager. And the more we grouped together, the more we made it a bigger thing. and just really, it started out by telling our friends and family, you know, come along to these matches, and it just got bigger and bigger. It was difficult at that time because we didn't have a professional league. The only teams that were being bankrolled at all in this country were Fulham and Arsenal. And then the rest of the teams, you know, they were made up of women who were, you know, posties, and, you know, they dropping their kids off to school and then going off to their office job and that sort of thing, and then training in the evenings. So we were so far behind where we needed to be, and where places like America were, who had a big league over there, and we were losing our players there. So people like Kelly Smith went over to America and had a scholarship over there and did really well over there because they had a league. And it's much like the lower league teams in this country. You're going to lose your players if you don't, you know, move up yourself. So it was a lot of hard work. It has been a lot of hard work for years. And then once we lost the sponsorship, by that time it was getting much more widely known, and the crowds were getting bigger, and the FA had worked really, really hard. And we pushed it as much as we could, and now it's doing really well, which is great, but still not there yet.
No, I mean, we'll get on to how it's developed in a little while. Anna, you've been going to watch football for a long time, haven't you? You were co-founder of the Swindon Town fanzine, the 69er. What's been your experience? Has the experience of female supporters changed over the years, or has it remained the same? How's it been for you?
Yeah, you know, I would say it has changed quite dramatically. When I started going regularly, which was, you know, around the beginning of the 80s, there were far fewer female fans than there are today. So I think that already says how far, you know, things have come. And yeah, so I was you know, around the family for 7 or 8 years, and I've always been pretty forthright in my opinions. So you know, prepared and able to combat some of the stuff that gets thrown at us. But social media wasn't a big thing back then. So Lucy has alluded to the abuse that she and a fellow fan have had online, and that was never anything that I was exposed to early on. And I keep a fairly low social media presence or profile at the moment. So, but it's brilliant to see the change in the dynamics of the football going public from what it was in the 70s and 80s. And I think obviously that's going to continue to change as the profile of the women's game also rises. So
I'll ask you about facilities in a little while, because that's one thing you know, that really, well, let's be honest, facilities at football grounds generally have been pretty awful over the years, but I will ask about the female side of it in a little while. Lots of things coming in already, so I'll get to some of the comments that we've got very shortly. But Alice, you're a player. You are playing the game of football. How did you get involved with it, and how easy was it to get involved with it?
Well, I'm actually Swindon Town through and through. I started just at a friend's birthday party at the community with John and Clive, and they actually just said to my parents, this girl can actually play football. And my mum and dad just thought they were having them on, but my mum and dad watched me and they thought, you know what, she's not too bad. And there wasn't many girls teams around at the beginning, so I started playing with the boys a lot. I'm quite tomboyish, to be fair, and I do love a good challenge. So I think playing with the boys really helped me gain my confidence, and the edge that I have now, I think, is I'm not nasty, but I like a good hard challenge. And I think that sort of really steadied me for the game. But when I got to about 10, 11, a lot of the coaches were saying, Alice just can't play anymore. She's becoming quite like a female. So we looked around for some clubs, and there was a few good clubs in and around Swindon. I started playing for Swindon Spitfires, who their profile's not as big now, but back then they were a very big club. They were always trying to push women's football onto us. So like Terry was saying about the England women's team, there was a magazine out back then, and it always had women's football in, and they would always offer it to us and we'd buy it. And if there was tickets for the England games at the county ground, they would always take us. So that was quite a big thing then. And we had the Wiltshire Schools for Excellence. It wasn't as big and there wasn't that many players at the beginning, but throughout my time there, it became a lot bigger. It's sort of quieted down now, but for us, that in Wiltshire and the surrounding areas, that was the hub of football. If you wanted to meet someone who was sort of at the same standard as you would go there to play.
We should say it's been a successful weekend, hasn't it, for the under-16s? They won the Wiltshire League. We should also say the Wiltshire County Cup was recently won by Swindon Town as well. So the club is definitely up. There was a 3-0 win against Exeter yesterday. I went to see the return game here in Devon a few weeks ago when Exeter won 4-1, which is not a great result. So they've turned that around. So the club is in a healthy situation at the minute.
It is, and all the players and coaches that we have really are trying to strive the club into a really good direction. I've been here for about, well, I'm as old as the furniture. I've been here for about 9-10 years, and the difference that Jamie and KP have made in the last couple of years, just looking at, I've been at other clubs and just seeing at other clubs where they are. So like clubs around here like Oxford, the facilities and the management and what they have at training and after training is what KP and Jamie are really trying to strive towards, and that's really helped us, I think.
Fantastic. Ali, right, now let's get into this, because you are a physio. You come on, you're treating the footballers of Swindon Town. Obviously, people watch you come onto the pitch, although not at Crawley on Saturday. What stayed on the pitch on Saturday? That's just... Anyway, moving on swiftly. How has that been? I mean, I think we more remember that controversy a few years ago at Chelsea, don't we, with Jose Mourinho and the Chelsea doctor, which many of us just sort of went, what's that about? That's awful. How's it been for you?
Do you know what? It's been really positive, especially with obviously the change of ownership and the staffing that we've been brought in. I was quite fortunate. I was initially on maternity leave when all the new staffing came in. And Joe Triolo, who's the head of medical, who I got to meet when we had the sort of pre-season games, he brought me in, and I just said, look, is there an opportunity for me to step up into the first team? Because at that time there was no first team physio. And he kindly offered me the opportunity. So when my little boy was 8 weeks old, I came back to work because obviously football was something that I was very passionate about, and particularly with the club, I think it was going in the right direction and it just seemed very positive. So as far as, I suppose, the people that I work with on an everyday basis, I couldn't feel more supported if I tried. The players have been very respectful. They're always very polite, which is a huge change compared to other bits and pieces that I've kind of experienced when I worked in the academy and sort of helped out. I just think that we've got the right people in to sort of support women working within the club. There's definitely a lot more women in support roles within the club, maybe not necessarily the medical department, but also the administrative roles that we've got. So that's all very positive. As far as the fans go, I've had a bit of a taste that, we've got some people that are sort of stuck in that dinosaur era, making comments on Twitter, the female physio. Well, why do you need to kind of make that unconscious bias that I'm a female running on the pitch? I'm just a physio that was running on the pitch. So people aren't aware of their perception of, well, what's the big deal about my gender? I'm here to do a job. And it should be any different to what it would be for a male. I just happen to be a female. So things like that, I think people need to sort of think about how they sort of speak, whether it be in person or behind the keyboard. And also, I've had a bit of experience with people shouting out things at me. We've had chats about, oh, they've got a sore groin, or, show us your tits and that sort of thing. Whilst I ignore it and carry on with my job, again, there's this perception of my gender and my role, and that they've got the right to say those things where, I'm not offended. I've got quite thick skin. I don't think necessarily I could work in football without it, but we do definitely need people to sort of back down on making those sorts of comments, because you will find there will be other women that come into it, will be quite offended and will get upset by that. I just think, we just need to take gender aside and just look at the job that we can provide, the players and the club.
Absolutely. We should give you some breaking news. The Swindon Town £2.3 million deal to buy the county ground from the council has been approved by the scrutiny committee. So what that effectively means is there are now 6 weeks of work to do in terms of due diligence. It goes through all the financial stages, and then hopefully in 6 weeks' time, the football club will have the keys to the county ground. So a little bit of work to do yet, but it's been approved by the scrutiny committee. So come May/June, Swindon Town will own the county ground. That's fantastic news, I think, for everybody.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that news has just come in, and the deal has been agreed by Swindon Borough Council. As we said, there's lots of things to go through yet, but that final hurdle has been gone through. And in terms of the due diligence, everything else needs to be done. So another 6 weeks' time, Swindon Town will own the county ground, which is fabulous news. Lucy, I know as a Bristol Rovers fan that may not be at top of your but I just thought it was well worth putting that one in because we were all been waiting for that decision. And it is fabulous news. It means the club can go on and develop whatever it wants to do at the county ground now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let's get to your experiences then. You said about online abuse, things like that. How are you treated in the ground? Do you get any problems in the ground?
I wouldn't say I've had problems in the ground, such as someone coming up to me and saying, "Why are you there? Why am I there?" for example. But things such as, say, for example, you're queuing for a bar, or you're about to leave, terrace, and guys are trying to push past you and they like touch you up in that sense. So that's kind of what I've had in person. And both me and my friends, like my closest friend, have had it whilst we were watching the games together. Like it happened just a couple of weeks ago, actually. Some guy like specifically pushed past us and touched us both around the waist. And her boyfriend stood next to us, and she turned to him and said, "Did that guy like touch you?" And he said no. And then he turned back to us and said, "Did he touch both of you?" And we were like, "Yes." So it's things like that, it more in person. But I know other people have had worse things happen to them and worse comments said. When one of the things we did quite early on was we did a survey, just to kind of get other people's experiences. And I think out of just under 400, 93% had seen it online, 63% had experienced it online, and 58% experienced it in a bar or at a ground, like sexist abuse, which we felt was quite significant figures. So that's kind of what one of the reasons why obviously we've been approaching the clubs, and because one of the things is about reporting instances. Sorry, I can't get my words out here. And not feeling either able to report it or know where to report it.
It just seems shocking to me, really, that these incidents do happen. I mean, you're talking to a 66-year-old chap here who, who's been through the generations in terms of watching football. But here we are in 2022, and this is still going on, Terry. It just seems baffling to me. Women enjoy football. That's the end of it, isn't it? There's no other.
Yeah, it should be, shouldn't it?
They're fans.
Yeah.
That's it. They go along, watch football. There's no other side to it, is there?
Yeah, I mean, we've had our season tickets at Swindon now for 27 years, 26 years, however long the new stand at the Trivenham Road end's been up. And all the guys around, I'm usually the only woman in our couple of rows, and they're great. The guys are great. They never look at me, they never treat me any differently. They don't talk to me as if I don't understand the game. The only thing I ever came across, really, apart from it being looked at as if it wasn't interesting enough for people to have more content on the website, was, for me personally, they would say to me, "So if you know that much about football, explain the offside rule." I thought, this is so typical. It's almost as if we don't have the brain to understand the game. And that was really irritating.
Well, I got to tell you, there are many male supporters now who don't.
You tell me what it is then.
Well, I tell you what, there are many male supporters who don't understand the offside rule now.
And a lot of linesmen.
Because the amount of times, put your flag up, linesman. Well, they're not offside yet. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So that goes on all the time. Just a quick comment on the buying of the county ground, Terry. You must be delighted about that.
Absolutely. I mean, how many years have we been waiting for this? And how many false dawns have there been? I can't believe it. I think when the Bradys were here, I thought then maybe, he was so wealthy and seemed so keen on, albeit moving the county ground, but still owning the ground, and nothing came of it. So you just get to the point where you think we're never going to own it. But there was something about Clem's, with something about his way. I don't think he makes false promises. He certainly doesn't seem to have done so far. And, they just seem such a good outfit now that's running the club. That
Well,
I just had faith in them to carry it through. It's great.
hopefully next week we're going to do a special panel with members of the trust and Rob Angus as well.
That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so just to get their take on it. Anna, you must be delighted as well because it's our ground now. Well, it will be.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's I mean it's fantastic news. I think I remember, if I remember rightly, I remember the year that the council took on the running of the club. And I remember my politics teacher at the time saying, this is not the right thing to do. This is the club kind of selling itself down the river and removing its own assets. So to get the stadium back under Swindon Town's control and as Terry said, under an owner who you can trust is a massive thing for us, and we really hope to push the club forward. I think you get your own assets and you can really make some strides up the leagues, hopefully. So,
yes, definitely. Yeah.
Great news.
Alice, as you said, you're Swindon Town mad. Your reaction to it? I mean, I'm going to get back to what we're talking about in a minute, but I think it's important to get this. How do you feel about it?
Oh, it's amazing news, and like Terry was saying about Clem and Rob, they are very positive people, and they've really welcomed us as a women's club, and they've been hopefully trying to get us some games at the county ground too. And just knowing that that's not just the men's, that's ours as well, is just really great positive news.
Yeah, Ali, you're an employee of the club. What will the mood be? I don't know if you're in tomorrow, are you? I don't know, but yeah. So what will be the mood tomorrow? Do the players do they have anything to do with this, or they're not interested? How would they feel?
I think it's a bit hard especially because a lot of them I guess some of them have been around for a very long time. So I think the ones that are definitely staying on for another season with their contract extensions, I think they're probably going to appreciate it a little bit more than obviously the ones that we got from loans or potentially only staying to the end of the season. So I think you're kind of going to get mixed ones where they care a little bit more than others. But definitely from a staffing point of view, I think a lot of us are sort of planning to stay for the long road, can see what Clem and Rob and everyone else is trying to work and build towards. So it's just exciting being on that journey with everyone.
Definitely. How welcoming have they been to you then, Ali? Because you've mentioned, some of our how can we put this, less illuminated fans have been, their usual self. But how have the club welcomed you in?
Oh, from word go. So obviously starting off with the academy, Seamus and Alan McLaughlin have been brilliant as far as sort of nurturing me into the football environment and giving me the opportunities to obviously get on my ATMIF, which enabled me to do first team fixtures. So whilst I was pregnant, and we had a lot of COVID issues, so obviously the club funded that, and it's not a cheap course. So they got me on that course to enable me to step up to that first team environment where I think, there's always that gamble that if you invest in someone, they might then go elsewhere like Bristol Rovers or another club. So I think the club have had a lot of trust and faith in me over the years. But particularly, since Clem and Rob and everyone stepped in, where previously, there kind of was that division between your directors and your executive staff and the ground staff, where now, you've got Rob who's sitting in an office with, Ray Murphy and Matt Waters and everyone that we sort of need to access on a day-to-day basis. Everyone's one big team. You don't feel like you can't approach someone. So if you've got an issue or, you want to discuss something, everyone's there. You're not blocked behind doors, which we kind of had before where people were kind of weaseling away from difficult conversations. So definitely as far as, support, if you need a hug or whatever it is, the club's there to listen. And, I appreciate everything that they've done for me and continue to do for me. And I guess all the other staff that come in, because it does feel like one big happy family. And it's very easy for us to kind of say this so that, all the fans hear it, but generally working there, I couldn't ask for a better employer.
How's it changed in the last few months? I think you know what I'm getting at. How's the mood changed at the football club?
Yeah, no, like it's just positive. It just, I think, it's been nice that Clem sort of came back for a period and then he's gone again. But, I think as far as, the change in staffing and just everything, it's just positive. I don't really feel like there's days where you're kind of having an off day. Everyone it's obviously we've had challenges where, we're not getting the wins, and that can obviously put a bit of a downer on things. But I think generally we've got a bunch of positive people within the club that we know that we're not going to achieve what we need to without working as a team. So from that perspective, it's great, being a female included in a bit of a, the man's game as we keep getting heard. It's to me, it's a team game, and that's how the club looks at it. It's a team. It's not the man's game. It's the club's game.
Great to hear. Comments coming in. This is from Derek Elston, a town fan from Northampton who's seen millions of games. I don't know how many it is, but millions. After being forced to sell the ground to the council, I never thought I would see the day when they own the ground again. Absolutely brilliant news. Malcolm says nothing came of the Brady bid because Swindon Borough Council vetoed it. They could still do so if they don't like the look of the landing application. So there's a little bit of a few hurdles still to go, as I explained, with 6 weeks of due diligence. Sean says, fill the corners in. Jason says, Terry, even a referee can't explain the offside rule. Can we go back to last Tuesday against Sutton? Jason says, Ali, would a supporter shout out at a female paramedic who has run onto the pitch? That is an interesting one, isn't it?
It is a really interesting point.
So, as far as you're aware, do female paramedics get any comments shouted at them at all?
Do you know what? I've not really discussed it with them, but most of the paramedics we tend to get at the moment are males. Obviously, we've got some female and male nurses that cover on a match day, but thankfully, touch wood, they're not needed to run on the pitch. But I'd be intrigued to kind of ask them from their experience covering previous matches, whether they've experienced it or they're like me. You kind of get in that bubble where your focus is on that player, and obviously having Mildy or whoever in your ear that you're kind of like ignoring everything else that gets said. But I'm definitely going to bring that up next home game and ask and see if they've experienced the same thing or not.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. Another one from Jason. I remember watching Doncaster Bells on TV. They were like the top team, weren't they? Love watching Gillian Coulthard put a hard tackle in. Go back to what Alice was saying.
And Kaz Walker. You didn't argue with those two.
No. I'll tell you what, I've played against some women footballers who, yeah, well, let's put it like this.
You're tough.
Yeah.
Aren't you, Alice?
Andy Williams says, I always thought Doncaster Bells were the forerunners of women's football. They were. This is from Peter. Massive hello to Terry. It was her idea for the OSC to sponsor the STFC women's kit. I noticed the sponsorship on the shirts at Exeter the other week. So, Lucy, from what you're hearing, how does Rovers compare? I mean, I won't ask you to comment on the sale of Swindon Ground. That's not your bag. I get that. But in terms of what you're hearing, how different is it at Rovers?
Do you mean in terms of like experiences or like Ali's experience? So in terms of Ali's experience, I would say it's the same. We also have a female physio, and I have heard multiple comments towards her since she's come into the post this season, at away grounds, at home grounds. The first time I heard it, it kind of shocked me because I was obviously this is the first time we had a female physio that I was aware of. I've been going since I was 10, but this is the first time I was aware of one. And so me and my friend just happened to walk past, and I heard it, and it kind of shocked me. I was like, what are they saying? And then it was about a couple of months later, we had a home game, and a person was stood next to me, and they said something like, "Oh, I wish I could go down so she could run my balls." And I just at that point, I just lost it. I was like, I just turned around to him and said, "Do you really think what you're saying is appropriate?" I said, "She's just doing a job. Shouldn't matter if it's male or female." And then just turn back around. So in terms of that is the same, and I do find that frustrating because it seems like it's every home game that it happens. Obviously, not every game there's a player that goes down injured, but that I find really, really frustrating. So I can kind of appreciate what Ali's saying there. So, but yeah, in terms of like experiences, I'm lucky in the sense that when I was growing up, I went with my dad and my granddad, who were very, very loved the fact that I love football, encouraged me to go, took me along with them. So in terms of like a family side of thing, I never felt any different. You know, that's just what I wanted to do. That's what I love doing on my weekends. I love spending time with them, going to watch our club, especially my granddad, who was going from like 1950. And there was many times we've been on away games together on the coach. Swindon, we've probably done like 3 or 4 times, did 3 or 4 times together. So yeah, in that sense, it was just more like when I was kind of growing up in school, and I was getting older, and social media kind of like we've touched on, that's where I kind of it was kind of seeing that me going to football was an issue. So that's kind of like experiences I've had.
Okay, fair enough. James says, my first game was in 1966. I thought it would never happen, only iron ground. Absolutely great news. I know this is off the subject we're talking about, but it's worth getting comments coming in. Just to reiterate that news, £2.3 million purchase of the county ground by the trust and the owners of the club has been approved by the scrutiny committee. Lots to go through before the final hurdle in 6 weeks' time, as I understand it. So there we are. Right, Terry, as I said, you've been involved with women's game for a while. I mean, there is a career path now for people like Alice, isn't there? Which is great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. It's been long needed, hasn't it? It seems as if it was such a struggle to get where the girls could actually go into professional football instead of having to do it as a sideline and have another job. And to have a professional league, it took a while to get there, but it's just brilliant because they can go anywhere now, can't they? They can, the sky's the limit. And
I mean,
the amount of facilities and, the coaches that they've got now and the grounds that they can play at, it's just fantastic. And I'm so pleased, and we can compete, because that was the other thing. Competitions, we always did well, but we never did well enough, and in Europe and that, and to be able to compete with the big guns now is just fantastic.
You mentioned the States. You mentioned the States, of course. They earn huge money, don't they? And they've just had a recent landmark ruling where they get equal pay with the men, which is a massive.
The men,
yeah. Do you
and
ever foresee that happening here?
Pardon?
Do you ever foresee that happening here?
I'm not sure. I'm just pleased it's got as far as it has. I don't know. I don't imagine it'll be a very long time when you consider what the men earn. It's incredible amounts. So I don't know. And a lot of it, it'll get better because it's on TV as well. So having TV rights makes a huge difference. Not having to play the games without anybody, just the supporters and the gate money. So that's great. But it'll be a while.
Yeah.
I think, we'll get there eventually.
Good. Anna, and now facilities at football grounds. I mean, goodness me, they're disgusting, some of them. And I could go through a whole list of some grounds. How do they compare, would you say, male or female?
Well, I can't say I've been in many male toilets.
No.
although in extremis, I might have nipped in there when the queue in the female toilets is too long. But it varies tremendously, doesn't it, from place to place? If you take Crawley, for example, on Saturday, the kind of top bogs, I would call them. They were clean. There were plenty of cubicles. If you go somewhere like Cambridge, I think Cambridge United have sanitary products in the ladies' toilets, so free sanitary products, which is fantastic, because if you get caught short like that as a female supporter, that's what you want access to. But on the other hand, if I think of Bristol Rovers, for example, sorry Lucy, the toilet facilities there for male and female were an absolute disgrace, to be honest. Yeah. There was no facility for washing your hands. They were little porter cabins, but I think some of it is about the age of the stadium. Not enough thought given to what people want, male or female, to be honest. And we're treated like football fans in some respects. Are treated like second-class citizens, aren't they? Really, you're asked to put up with things that you wouldn't be asked to put up with in any other entertainment venue. But just to digress a little bit, I did just want to say as well, the sort of stuff we're sharing here, it is kind of shocking in this day and age, the sort of abuse that people are subject to. And although it's a cliche to say it, football does to some extent mirror life. And it's not just as a female football supporter that you get this sort of abuse. You encounter it in your everyday life, the sort of levels of misogynism that you might experience. So I'll give you one quick example from Saturday, where a chant went up from the Swindon supporters behind me, which was, "If you can't bang a woman, bang a drum," which was the anti the anti-drum chant, because Crawley supporters had a couple of drums. Now, as a woman standing there, did that make me feel great? Not particularly. I thought, well, it's a bunch of young lads shouting stuff that they don't really understand, so they don't understand what sort of impact that might have on someone. But this is, like I said, it's a mirror to life, and sexism is still rife in every walk of life. And the more positive female role models we have, like these people here, all of us, and the more exposure the women's game has, and female figures in football, Alex Scott, Stephanie Frappard, those kinds, the better.
Yeah, well, I have to say I didn't hear that, but on the behalf of the male species, I'm ashamed to hear that, and I have to say it kind of isn't good at all. I mean, Alice, what's been your experience? I mean, when you're playing, you get people along who want to watch a game of football. It's as simple as that, isn't it? But when you've been to games, what's it been like for you?
When I've been to games, it's not normally too bad. Fortunately, I haven't had as many incidents as Lucy had. To be honest, the games that I sort of go to are with my dad, because he's a big Plymouth supporter. So if I go to many Swindon games, it's when Plymouth are playing, because my other half, he plays football on a Saturday as well. And now I've got a baby, it's quite difficult to try and get out to games. But even if I go to watch lower level leagues, just like where my husband plays, sometimes you might get the odd person try and just ask, oh, why are you here? Or do you need help knowing what the score is? No, I think I can count a few goals. Oh, he looks like he's offside. Do you know what that is? Yeah, I play football. And as soon as you sort of say you play football, then your sexuality sort of gets brought up. So it's like, oh, you play football, you must be gay. Does it matter if I am gay? It shouldn't matter who I am as a person. I just like to play football. And a lot of sort of, not abuse, but a lot of things that get spoken to me is mainly about sexuality, like, oh yeah, you must like to all go in the showers after the games, or things like that. And it's comments like that have nothing to do with football. A lot of the comments that a lot of the girls receive aren't to do about football. It's sort of to do with your sexuality or things like that. And I just don't think any of it plays a part in the game.
Certainly doesn't. No, you're absolutely right, Ali. How shocked are you by hearing some of these comments? I mean, I'm guessing not shocked at all, really. Do you ever get to speak to female assistant referees, because they get dogs abuse sometimes just because they happen to be female? Now, I believe that if you're an official and people don't, you either make good decisions or bad decisions. Doesn't matter which gender you are. I mean, have you talked to female assistant referees or officials?
No, I've not spoken to anyone. Sort of, obviously, I've met the female physio at Bristol Rovers, and we've sort of had a chit chat about various things that have got said. So, because obviously, I'm noticing a lot more women physios sort of coming into the game, and had a chat about various experiences. And I think it's quite similar across the board in what we're experiencing. Obviously, I definitely think that, some clubs are a bit more supportive than others with having a female staff member. But going back to what Anna was saying about facilities, often we'll go to some of these away trips and there won't be a female toilet within walking distance for me to use. So often I'm finding I'm having to then use the toilet that the players are using within the change room. So obviously, not that I feel like I need my private space, but there isn't even that option that you can even go. So I think when we went to Forest Green, I asked, could I go to the toilet? And they made me walk all the way down through into the stands and had to go use the general public's toilet. There was no staff female toilet to use, which was fine because we got there early enough. But if I need to go again before we left, I then have to go through a crowd of people to get to the toilet, to then have to probably stand in a line to then get back to the place to do my job. So it's just little things like that. We're still a little bit behind. But yeah, I haven't spoken to any sort of the officials, but I'm sure they've probably got a similar situation where, they share a small change room amongst themselves and probably have the similar issue with the toilet. Because I know with our officials room, there's one toilet, one change space and one shower. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
How is it at Swindon then for you? Is it okay there?
As far as facilities, yeah, absolutely fine. Especially now that we've had a change of ownership, the toilets that were sort of off bounds, we can now access. So rather than having to walk down one end and use what would be the away sort of toilets, we can now use what used to be the executive toilets, because that's now not locked. Everyone can use it. So I think, there's definitely further access for us to have the facilities that we require.
Lucy, how will your organisation deal with all this? Because you're getting more and more feedback, I'm guessing, from female supporters, players, officials from around the country. What is your plan for dealing with all this?
Yeah, so we obviously, one of our key aims is, we want to champion women in football across all levels of the game. So obviously, even though we are fans, it's set up for fans. We're not limiting ourselves to fans. We want to support, players, referees, physios, officials, whatever kind of capacity you're involved in football, as well as obviously fans. And obviously, one of our key things is about education. And we're really keen to do like an education module to go out in schools and community trusts and clubs to, just kind of, talk about equality in football and talk about sexism in football, because even in 2022, there's lots of girls that want to play football in school, in primary school, that aren't allowed because, they said, they should play netball or do dancing or whatever sport they're told to do instead. But also we're really keen to do more data research as well. So I'd be really interested about the facility side of things. That's definitely something I could feed back. It's something we could do. And one of obviously our key things is, we have the reporting system in place. So we do encourage fans to report any instances through that. And then we can feed back to the clubs. But also one of our exciting things is having that ambassador to represent the clubs. So it could be a female fan of any age, and someone obviously who attends games regularly, who can kind of be the link in between ourselves and the club. So obviously can feed back positive things. So for example, I don't know if a female fan had a really positive experience, or there's like a new female supporters group or something that's set up. But also feedback of any like reports or things that say, actually, we feel this needs to improve. And then we can support in that. And then obviously you might see that I'm wearing merchandise as well. And we want to donate that. We're donating the funds to grassroots women's football, because we really want to support that and build that pathway, as we know the funding is limited. So that's kind of one of the other areas we want to support.
Great. That's very good to hear. Just to go back to the ground purchase, this is from Alex Pollock of the Trust, who are 50% involved in the purchase of the ground. Trust SCFC members who are attending Wednesday's AGM will be first to hear the next steps and latest progress. That's happening on Wednesday night in the Legends Lounge, I believe, from 6 o'clock. Just to reiterate that deal's been agreed with the Scrutiny Committee, the £2.3 million purchase of the county ground. More on that to come next week in what we hope will be a special panel here on the Monday night panel. So Terry, how encouraged are you with the progress being made now, not only with women's football, but women in football, because there are so many roles now that they are undertaking? We're seeing more and more female pundits on men's games, more female presenters, all those kind of things. How encouraged are you?
I think it's great, particularly to see the likes of Alex and Sue Smith and the other girls reporting on the games. They can do it as good as any fella can. They've played it. They know what they're looking at. They know how to report on it. So I think it's really good. And the fact that they're just encouraged to. So the panels that they sit with are a mixture of men and women. And they are equally, chatting about the game and remarking on the game, whether it's a male or female. So, I think it's great. There is no difference. And that's lovely to see. They don't make a special deal of the fact that there's a woman sitting there, or there's a woman, up in the gantry commenting on the game. It's just great, because they know the game as well as the men do. And to see them commenting on the men's game particularly, as opposed to it used to be that they just commented on the women's game. And it was almost like, well, that's, you stay with what you know. But why wouldn't you be able to comment on a men's game? You go to see them week in, week out.
Quite right. I mean, I remember when I was a reporter many, many years ago, there were one or two female reporters who were well respected. They were well respected. And the managers treated them with courtesy and respect, because they really genuinely appreciated what their whole thing about the game was. So
Yeah.
it was there. We're not talking about, it's always been sexism in the game. Managers
No.
did treat women with respect, which I was really quite appreciated at the time.
Yeah.
Comments coming in. Adam says, wasn't that long ago that Emma Hayes, the Chelsea manager, was linked with AFC Wimbledon. I think she was linked with Swindon at one point.
Yeah.
One day it will happen. Lewis men's and women's get paid the same. My better half is not a football fan. She's from Northampton. But I do enjoy taking her to games every now and again. She's enjoyed watching Swindon and is kind of getting into it. There are plenty of guys in the Don Rogers who know a lot less about football than most women. Malcolm says the gents at Exeter and Newport in particular spring to mind as being bad, as I recall. Yeah, they're not great for both, I have to say. As I have said before, sexism in football is no different to homophobia or racism. There was a female assistant referee a couple of seasons ago who didn't make one wrong decision and was excellent in all games. Some of the male assistant referees should take notes from her. The female refs and linos seem to have disappeared from the men's game, haven't they? Can't remember the last time I saw one. The female refs and assistants are in the higher leagues, replacing the dross that we have in League Two. That's Jason's opinion. And do the panel think that we'll see female managers, coaches in the men's league football in the future? Anna, what about that? I mean, I'll get on to players like Megan Rapinoe in a minute with you, Alice, if I might, because she's looked upon as one of the great role models for women's football. But what about that? I mean, Emma Hayes was linked with Swindon a little while ago. Whether that was ever a realistic link, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely going to happen. It will
Yeah.
definitely happen, and there's no reason why not. As we've said here, that everyone should be looked at and employed on their own merit, whether they're male, female, or whatever. And had Emma Hayes been appointed as Swindon town manager, or I think we would have got behind whoever that is. So, the way the game has developed, there is so much knowledge in the female game. Everyone here can talk as good a game as any male fan or male player or male physio can talk. So the way to do that again is through exposure. So the televisation of the women's game in the UK has really taken off. Emma Hayes has got a very good profile as manager of Chelsea. And I don't know if you remember, Vic, years ago, or anyone else on here remembers the Manageress. Do you remember that? Back in the 80s?
I actually was in that. It was filmed at the county ground one, and I was an extra, and I got 50 quid for my trouble, which was lovely.
Well, there you go. So it is definitely going to happen, and I actually don't think it'll be too far in the distant future. I think it'll be
I agree.
sooner than we think, and it will be all to the good, because everybody brings a different perspective to the game, and I think a female manager or female coach will bring a different perspective, and bring it on, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sherry Lungi was the manageress in that, you might well remember.
Right.
So there were, glad you brought that up, because then I can actually say I was actually in an episode of that for about 10 minutes. So this is from Paddy. Can't believe anybody would talk down to a woman at football. Why would you? Shame on anyone who does. We sit by women in the Don Rogers stand, but not dream of talking to them in such a way. Well said, Paddy. So Alice, what about that? Because Megan Rapinoe, people like that, she's been a real role model and in the forefront of that fight to get equal pay for women in America. Where do you think she sits in terms of able to play in a men's game? Because there she is, she's a World Cup winner. She's got goodness knows what, top player. Would she be able to play at a level in men's game that is pretty high? How would you assess that?
Definitely. I think she would be able to, but what we have to sort of realise is a lot of men, when they talk about football, is, oh, you wouldn't be able to do this, you wouldn't be able to do that. But especially now I've had a baby, I've realised how different women's bodies are, and compared to males, how, male bodies might be stronger than ours, but just in terms of skill, knowledge, reading of the game, she's one of the best players men or women have seen. And just because someone may not be as physically strong as a man doesn't mean that they won't be able to play competitively in a male high league. Just because I think sometimes men don't see that women footballers aren't just good footballers, they're also good readers of the game. And I think that's what sort of separates a lot of women and men footballers. I know a lot of really good footballers, they're good, but the step up is the ones that can really read the game and bring other people into the game, which if you watch Megan Rapinoe, she can bring anyone into the game just by looking, giving a little signal, or even just the most simplest pass that most of us would do, but she just does it with such elegance that it just starts a whole different ball game.
And she's raised the profile of women's football immeasurably, hasn't she?
She has, and I think it's not just, I think it's her as a person as well. She's, as you can tell, she's always got different coloured hair, but she's just not afraid to speak her own mind. She really believes in the women's game, and she believes in her teammates as well. And I think 9 times out of 10, that's all it takes, is just for that one person to stand up and really raise their opinion. And I think she's done that. She's just such an advocate for not just football, but like different organisations, especially like LGBT. And she's really not afraid to speak her own mind. Like, I know she wrote on Instagram a few weeks ago, she's taken a few weeks out of football just because of her mental health. And she's not afraid to say that. And I think that's what a lot of us could really take from her.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Dan says it's great to see so many female football presenters now. Michelle Owen on Sky for the EFL, Alex Scott on Football Focus, and Laura Woods on ITV FA Cup coverage, to name a couple. Right, let's go around the panel then and see what you would like to change in the next few months. I mean, you know, we're not going to say all will be well within the next 5 months or whatever, but Ali, what would you like to see change?
I just think maybe start off with dialogue. I want to see that, you know, there's a perceptual change, particularly within the fans, whether it be for me, you know, by the end of the season, not having to hear another negative comment from either our fans or the away fans. I think it's going to be about small changes that end up snowballing into bigger change over time. So I think, you know, maybe, you know, it be, if you are a fan and go to a football game, you know, you're hearing another male say to another one, that's an inappropriate comment, and kind of support the females, because it may not be necessarily their partner or their daughter or someone they know might be experiencing the same thing. So I think we kind of need to reflect on ourselves and what that might mean for somebody else that potentially might be close to us. I think we need to start to see little changes and hope that, you know, over time we'll see bigger ones. So, yeah.
Yeah, very, very good. And I have to say, if you hear anything that you don't like, then there are stewards, and the stewards around Rowayset are very good. They will take action. So I think, you know, that's another point. Lucy, gosh, you started this campaign. What would you like to see change in the next few months?
I mean, what Ali said was absolutely spot on. It is about those small changes, and about, you know, if you're a guy and you hear, you know, one of your friends saying an inappropriate comment, actually calling them out, because it isn't okay. I guess for us, obviously on a personal note, it's just, you know, continuing to spread that message, and continuing to, you know, for people to you know, I guess it's more about education and awareness about, you know, that football is a game for all. It's a universal game of universal rules, and it should be one that should be a game that's enjoyed by all. But I guess another thing is, obviously the Women's Euros is on this summer as well, and I hope that, you know, the whole country can get behind the Lionesses, because I think they really deserve that support. There's no reason why they can't go and win it. It's in our own country. I'm attending myself. I've attended a few kind of women's games over the last couple of years. Obviously Bristol Rovers women as well. They've kind of built over the last couple of years. I think, but I might be wrong, they've just got promoted again, which may mean they're coming in the same league as Swindon. So that's going to be quite exciting for the girls as well, because they've worked really, really hard, but through the community trust as well. So yeah, again, so it's just kind of small changes, education, awareness, and then just support for the women's game as well as the.
Yeah, I went to a talk by the joint manager of the Exeter City Women a couple of weeks ago, Abby, and she was saying that the relationship between the women's team and the males football club has changed immeasurably over the last couple of years. Terry, I guess that is a big thing, isn't it? Is that something you want to continue to see change?
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd like to see is a point that Ali made earlier on, is to people's description of somebody. I'd rather we kept on with trying to get them to say it's the physio or the linesman or the third official or something, not it's a female physio, and just drop that and let's make it more equal. And if we can gradually get that through to people, to stop describing people like Ali as a female physio. She's a physio.
Yeah, quite right. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that. I'd really like to see that.
And an incredibly qualified one as well, Ali.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you've done the hard yards, haven't you? You haven't just turned up with a bag and sort of gone on with a magic sponge. You know what you're doing, don't you?
Although this particular fan on Twitter seemed to make out that, the female physio came on the pitch and didn't do much. Well, part of my job is to assess someone. If someone's gone down, whether you think that they're injured or not, the player sometimes needs that reassurance. They sometimes need that time to actually realize things are okay. So whilst you can perceive that I've done nothing and run on the pitch, that's your perception of what is going on for that player. Obviously, there are instances where someone might be time wasting, but for that player, that time when they've been hit, sometimes they just need a breather to get that pain to go down. And there is that treatment and that reassurance is what part of the job is. And it's being able to think on your feet quickly. So I just think, fans just need to kind of, if you don't know, ask a question, but don't start making judgments.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a comment. I'll get to you in a minute, Anna. Don't worry. But here's a comment from Dan. It says, what did Matt Baldry say to John Sheridan at the Oldham game, Ali? You were pictured laughing at what he was saying. Must have been funny with half of the bench laughing. Can you tell us what was said?
There's certain words that got thrown out that probably shouldn't be repeated. I was laughing at the language choices of Sheridan towards our lovely Frenchie. I won't say anything more than that, but there was some colourful language used and it was quite inappropriate.
Maybe you can message us all later and let us know. This is from Greg. I personally feel we're a long way from seeing a women's manager in the men's game, as we still have issues with the lack of black managers, which needs sorting first. Tiny steps, but we will get there. It is a point about ethnic managers as well. As there seems to be more. There must be more inclusion. It's as simple as that. Anna, your thoughts on changing the game? What would you do?
Yeah, I struggle to think of things that I would change within months. Some of these things are so ingrained. You've got to look at long-term programs, haven't you? You've got to look at long-term programs, for example, around female officials. You've got to look at the profile of the women's game, which will continue to grow. And I think the eliminating kind of misogynism and all that is probably going to be related to the growth of the women's game in part, and the growth of the profile of females in the game. So in the short term, maybe you concentrate on the real tangibles, like improving the facilities for female supporters at grounds in terms of the toilet facilities. But just to say, one of the other things I would change in the next few months is swapping places with Forest Green. So they're going to 17, we're going to 5. However, they are already 1-0 up at Colchester, by the way.
Oh, are they? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Fair enough. They've had a real blip.
It's going to be a long road to change things for females in football, but over time, with the effort that Lucy and Co and everyone else is putting in, there's a good start already made.
Yeah, we know we're only at the beginning, but we know we want it to be a long-term change, and we want to make it better, obviously, kind of for the next generation, because we know it's going to take its time.
Alice, your thoughts?
I totally agree with Anna. I do think it is a slow progress, and like Lucy said, she wants to better it for the next generation. And I've just had a daughter about a year ago, and I want the game to be different for her. I want her to be able to. When I used to go to school and I'd say I want to be a footballer, my teachers would just laugh at me. And I want her to be able to go to school and be like, I want to be a footballer. My mum showed me I can be a footballer. I'm going to be a footballer. And if that's what she wants to do, I want her to just not even have any back chat from it. Just, okay, well done. Go and train harder. Not only boys can play football. No, anyone can play football. And that's what I want her to grow up in, a world and a society that just agree. They don't have to say, oh, boys are better, or oh, shouldn't you be doing this? No, if that's what she wants to do, then that's what she can do.
Brilliant. Well said. This is from Kevin. Male or female, if you're good enough, you're good enough. End of. Fair point.
Yeah,
and just to end on a light note, this from Steve. This for you, Ali. Whatever happened to the bucket and the magic sponge? I mean, you'll be aware in days gone by, on a cold November afternoon, the trainer would run on with a bucket of cold water and a sponge and show it to the player, who would immediately get up and run away again. Does that have a part in football anymore?
Not quite. Yeah. The bag of ice when they come off, that's about it. No bucket and water. Although I was shocked the other day, and this is going a little bit off topic. So I went down for Josh Davidson on the pitch, and he wanted a bottle of water. Reedy had taken the bottle of water, and one of the opposition players had taken the bottle of water. And I said, "Can I have the rest of it?" He looked at it, finished the bottle of water, and then just hands me the bottle. And I
saw that.
And I'm like, do you know what? I want to throw this at you, but I'm going to get sacked over this. It's an excuse. The female physio is just throwing this bottle at this player. But you talk about respect. Like, the men don't even have respect for each other.
No, I saw that. Yeah.
And I was furious. Thank God my face wasn't photographed then, but I was absolutely raging, thinking, like, sorry, Josh, I haven't got a bottle of water for you. But that bucket would have been useful because it would have been enough to share around, really.
Well, on that point, Steve has sent this message. I also like the way away players take bottles of water from the physio's bag. Sometimes they do it, in a spirit of cooperation, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but I think I need to start packing more than one, especially with it starting to warm up now. In the weekend, I was like taking out different bits of tape. What can I get rid of the bare minimum to make sure there's more bottles of water? Because I don't want to get in that situation where I actually hope I've got a bucket with me.
Well, it's going to be very warm this weekend. There's no game, so you're all right.
All right.
Right, Chris, thank you very much indeed, everybody. It's been really illuminating. And I, as a male, have learned a lot over the last hour, so I really appreciate that. And we've also learned, of course, that Borough Council are saying, this is what they're actually quoting: "We're pleased to report the sale of the county ground to a joint venture of official STFC and Trust FCFC now has final approval from the council. The next step will be for the parties to finalise the legal documentation to complete the sale." And that's what I was referring to earlier. That'll take about 6 weeks. But Chris, good news. And we've learned a lot tonight, haven't we?
Very good news we have, certainly. But thank you very much to everybody on the panel tonight. It's been absolutely fascinating. Anna, going back to your point you said about the chant that was made about the drum. Yes, I heard that too. And I looked at the young lad beside me, shook my head, and he didn't know what to do. I don't think they're like sheep, aren't they? One person starts a chant, doesn't matter what it is, and they all just join in, but they don't understand what they're saying a lot of the time. So yeah, it wasn't the best of things to do. But
I'd just like to say thanks to Hannah's as well, who sent me a tweet about the council. So thanks very much indeed for that. Don't forget the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is on a Wednesday night at 9:00. We should also say congratulations to the Loathed Strangers podcast, which has clocked up its 400th edition, which is an amazing milestone as well. So lots of good fan entertainment out there for you to enjoy.
Certainly is. So thank you very much, everybody. It's a privilege to have you all on here. I know it's taken up your time and everything on a Monday evening, but thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll be meeting again. As you know, we were previewing the her game 2 game, which was Forest Green Rovers next Saturday. Unfortunately, it's been postponed, but we thought it was still very valuable to go ahead with this. It will now be on the 26th of April. So we'll see what we can do to get that highlighted as well. So thank you very much for everybody for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you again soon.